Hello there. This is a lesson on volunteers, how to recruit, train, and retain your volunteers. Now, I am Larry Hillman. My website is larryhillmanministries.com. My YouTube channel is Larry Hillman Ministries, and you can reach out to me by email at larryhillmanministries@yahoo.com. Now, I've got some books. This first one right here, Bigger is Better, tells you how to do a children's service from the time the kids walk in to the time they leave. It covers object lessons, crowd control, lesson planning, all the things that you need to do to carry on a morning service. The other one there, How to Recruit, Train, and Retain, is some of the stuff that we're going to be covering today. And then I have one on my 50 years of KidMin with my experiences. We learn from experience, but it doesn't always have to be our own. We can learn from someone else's experience. And so I tell you things that worked and some things that didn't work. And then the next one is on leadership in hard times, the legacy of Nehemiah. Some principles there that we learn. And the last one, Champ, is a little story about a dog who was rescued just like Jesus rescues us. Now, as we get into our lesson, the first thing that I want you to do when you start looking for new volunteers is to pray. Now, I know that it seems like it's a cliche, but it's not. It actually works. Imagine that. Prayer works. And then Jesus said in Matthew 9:38 that we should ask the Lord of the harvest to send forth laborers into the harvest. Now, Jesus didn't ask us to do that. He commanded us to do that. We are commanded to ask God for helpers, for laborers, to get the word out to the children. So make sure that you pray and ask God to lead you to the right people that He wants you to have as you start to build your team. Now, as you begin to build that team, you're going to need a plan. You need a blueprint. Before you build a house, you have a blueprint. Before you do anything, you have it planned out. So you need a plan whenever you get ready to build your team. You need to know where you're going, what you're going to do when you get there, when you're going to get there, and how long it's going to take to get there, and how you're going to do it, and who's going to help you. All right? These are things that you need to have ready before you ever start, because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to know whenever you get there? All right? And then you got to keep that ministry. Your ministry should have a vision that aligns with your church's ministry. It should be set up through the church. And then you need a handbook that details everything that is expected of people that you want to be on your team. People don't like ambiguity. They don't like not knowing what's going to happen. Oh, I don't know what they're going to ask me to do. That people shy back from that. So have a handbook telling them what time they should be there, how long they're going to be there. Have a job description that tells them the different jobs that they're going to do. And then decide how long is it going to take you to build this team. Decide what kind of team that you want to build. Are you building one for just large group, or one just for small group, or for both? You building one for Wednesday night or Sunday morning? Right? Know what you're doing and have that plan ready. Because once you get those workers, there's going to be times when they miss, or they're not going to be able to be there. What's the procedure for that? Do they call you? Do they call a fellow worker and swap work assignments? How do they handle that? That's all in the procedures manual. So give them as much information up front as you can. Now let's look at what Jesus did, because He recruited people to be on His team. Here's what He did. He didn't beg. Don't go to somebody and say, well, we need help. I just don't know what we're going to do. Or if we don't get some help, we're just going to have to close it down. I heard that there was a pastor who made that statement about the preschool from the pulpit. If we don't get some help in there, we're going to have to close it down. Well, do you really think that motivates people to be a part of a team like that? They want to be a part of a team that's exciting and alive and is making a difference in people's lives. Right? So don't go in there begging. You have a great opportunity for people to affect eternity by serving in the children's ministry. Be proud of that. Be bold with that. Be happy to give them that opportunity to use their God-given talents. Right? And then Jesus recruited one-on-one. Right? He went individually to the people that he asked to be a part of his team. He spoke to thousands, but he recruited one-on-one. And we'll talk a little bit about that, a little more about that in just a moment. And then Jesus wasn't afraid to ask, the big ask. People, well, that's a very prominent member in the church, or, they already are so busy, and I don't know if I should ask them, and maybe they're going to say no. Well, then let them say no. How hard is that? How bad is that they would say no? So don't be afraid to ask. Pray and ask God who you should ask, and then go do it. All right, follow through with it. And then Jesus was Spirit-led. You know that Jesus prayed and asked God, who do you want on my team? Who is it that you want to make one of the 12 apostles? And then Jesus went to that person because since he had prayed and was led by the Spirit to the right person, that person's heart was already prepared and ready to say yes. So pray and ask God and be like Jesus, be led by the Spirit. Now, here are some things right here that work and some that don't. The first one is one that doesn't work, and that is an announcement from the pulpit or in the bulletin. It just does not work. People easily just disregard it. It's not anything that I have no buy-in. It's not directed to me directly. If I say no, nobody's going to know about it. Those do not work. And one of the biggest fallacies that I've heard people say is, if I could just get the pastor to make an announcement from the pulpit so they'd see how important it is, I would get workers. No, you wouldn't. It does. It's very poor percentage of people will come to you that way. And another thing that doesn't work for the long run is requiring your parents to serve. They're going to rebel when you tell them that at the start, and even if they come in, they're not going to be happy that they are doing this. They're not going to want to stay very long, and you do not want people serving others that don't want to be there. So that doesn't work either. But then what does work? Well, you probably have a new members class. See if you can present your opportunity to those new members. And even if you don't get to speak in the class, follow up with those new members afterward. Giving them that opportunity, because when you see them, present them with that handbook that you have, your procedures manual, and say, here, this is what we want to do in the children's ministry. Or maybe print out the vision of your children's ministry and some testimonies of great things that have happened, and say, hey, you have an opportunity to be a part of the best team that's on this at this church. And get out there and give them that opportunity. And then your family, but not only your family, but the family of your team members and the family of the children. All right? They can see what's happening. Your family sees how it affects you and how happy you are to be there and the difference that you're making. So use that. But again, your team has a family and the children have families, so make them a part of it as well. And then the others, your friends, yours, the team members, and the children. The biggest plus, or the thing that is the most productive in recruiting new people is one-on-one contact, personal relationship, somebody that you know, somebody that your family and your team members know, a friend, and you ask them to be a part of what you're doing. That's the best way to get new volunteers. Now, find their talent. You see, not everyone wants to be up on stage. In fact, the number one fear across Americans is public speaking, above everything else. When I'm up there and they see me doing an object lesson or doing the ventriloquism doll, I've had people say, oh, I can't do that. I can't work in there. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just asking you to stand in the back and wait for a child to raise their hand and see what they want, what their question is. I'm just asking you to stand by the door and greet them as they come in and make sure the people that aren't supposed to be there stay out. All right? So find their talent. Have that handbook. As I said just a little earlier, have your handbook with all the procedures in it. And the times that you have meetings, how often you have meetings, special events that are going on. What do they do if they're sick and can't make it? What happens when they do, something happens and they haven't planned ahead of time and they're not able to get there. Have that handbook, what to wear. You know, the men don't need to wear suit and ties to come in there and talk with the children. All right, so what do you wear and all the responsibilities that you have for them. And then the job descriptions. Make a list not only of the jobs that you need now, but of the jobs you're going to need in the future, because you want to grow and you got to be prepared. You know, how would God send you more kids if you're not prepared to take care of them? So you have a job list. You can start with security, the people that at the door. You can have greeters. You can have people who make sure the children are checked in for the service, people who register the first time visitors, people that do the pre-service activities, no matter whatever type of games or things that you have for them to do ahead of time, people that are crowd control, who just ask the kids to be quiet when they're talking, people who help lead singing, people who work in the media and the sound booth, people who set up, people who take down, people who do an object lesson, you know, people who follow up afterward and send and contact those who are absent, or send a postcard to the first time visitors thanking them for coming. There's all kinds of jobs that you can have for people that they don't has nothing to do with them standing up talking up on the stage. So give them that job list and let them pick a job that they're comfortable with and let them serve at that position. I've got one lady who's been working in our children's ministry with me for over 20 years. And she comes on the first Sunday. That's her Sunday to serve. She comes in, she does the crowd control, and she loves it, and she doesn't want to do anymore. I've tried to promote her and let her teach a lesson or something like that. She's happy with what she's doing. She's happy at that level, so she serves at that level, because we need people at that level. And then when we get the new worker, we have a short training session that we go over with them. Of course, we go over all the procedures and the job description, but then we have what we call Take 5. And they show up on a Sunday morning, and one of our experienced workers just takes 5 minutes and shows them around the room, shows them where everything is, and makes them familiar with the classroom. And then we have on-job training, we call it OJT, where they're scheduled for a service. They stay the entire service, and they shadow one of our experienced workers that's doing the job that they're going to be doing. And they learn how to do that job and what not to do, as well as what to do. Afterward, we have a follow-up meeting with them and see if there's anything that they have a question about or anything that they want to know. And then we have another meeting a week or so later before we schedule them to come in and do it on their own. So we train them, we follow up with them, we send them emails, we thank them for coming. So that they're fully trained and know what's expected of them, because the last thing you want to do is have someone show up that doesn't know what they want to do or how to do what they need to do. And then also, one of the things that we have in our procedures in our handbook is we let them know that we're only asking you to serve for 3 months, 1 quarter. At the end of that 1 quarter, if you want to leave, you can leave. Because some people have this idea that if I sign up, I've signed up for life. I'll never get out of there. No, we're just asking you for a 3-month commitment. And whether they serve once a month or twice a month, whether you have 2 services or 1 service, whether they serve 2 services on 1 Sunday or just 1 service, all of that is in the procedures manual. But they need to know that there is an ending time for their service, so they can commit to 3 months, because they're very leery of committing if they don't know whenever there's a stop to it. So make sure that they know that as well. And then once you have your workers, you're going to have meetings. And here are a few things to remember when you have that meeting. First off, the length of your meeting. There's no reason to have an hour-long meeting when you have 15 minutes worth of information. This is just not worth it. Remember, the mind can only retain what the rear end can endure. So they're sitting there for a long time and it's not enjoyable. They're not going to remember it, and they're not going to want to come back to your next meeting, and then you'll be wondering, why doesn't anybody want to come to my meetings? So make your meetings informative, give them the information that they need, and then make it enjoyable. I'm not saying be a stand-up comedian, but I'm saying make it to where they at least is pleasant. It's pleasant surroundings, pleasant people, everybody's smiling and having a good time as you give out that information. And then the frequency of your meetings. Have options. People, as we know today, have very busy lives. So if you're going to have a meeting, and I use Zoom for most of our team meetings, schedule it on Tuesday and Thursday. Maybe schedule one at 11 in the morning for people that can't be there at night. Give them an option. Make it as easy as possible for them to get that meeting. Don't just say, well, I'm going to have this meeting at that time, and if they're a good worker, they'll be there. Well, sometimes that doesn't take place, and that's not really being a good leader. So give them options. And then have regularly scheduled meetings, which are in the procedures manual. Okay, once a quarter, we're going to have this meeting. So put it on your calendar now. Get ready for it. Because there may be times when you have to have spur-of-the-moment meetings. Maybe there's a building thing going on, and you're going to have to do things differently than normal, and you may have to have an impromptu meeting, but have your regularly scheduled meetings. And then no hallway meetings on Sunday. I've had people come walking past me and say, Pastor Larry, I need this. Hold on, send me an email, because if you don't send me that email, I'm not going to remember this. Right? Our minds are thinking 14 different things on Sunday morning. And in my case, it's being an associate pastor and over the children's ministry and over the youth and the preschool and the parking lot and helping out in other ways. I've got a lot of things on my mind, so you better send me an email. I'm not getting it. So no hallway meetings from me to them or them to me. And then communication. We all know that person who says, I didn't know the church was doing that. Well, it's been in the verbal announcements for the past 4 Sundays. It's been in the bulletin for the past 6 Sundays. People don't always hear what you think they hear. So communicate and do it again and again and again and again and again. And when you think you've communicated too much, do it one more time. Communicate in different ways, emails, text messages, in person, send them a postcard, give them a flyer. All right? That communication is key, because people do not always hear what you're saying or what you're trying to communicate. And what the greatest fallacy about communication is the belief that it actually took place. So do it over and over and over. And then your body language when you're having meetings is the same way when you're up speaking to the children or to adults or whoever. Recognize your facial expressions. And the ladies usually have a little bit more challenge with this than do the men. But when you hear something bad or something that they're doing the wrong way, or you would never think of doing it that way, be careful of what the expression is on your face, because it says a lot to the people out there. You may be able to correct them. You may be able to say, well, we don't want to do it that way, but you don't want to, so be careful, because your face does speak. And then the tone of your voice. I had a professor in college, and he talked like this the whole time, and it was the most boring class I've ever had in my life. He gave out great information, but he could have gotten up or down a little bit with his tone, a little louder, a little softer, as far as the level of his voice. So be aware of those things. Be aware of body language. And if you want to do a little bit of a study, if people cross their arms, they're shutting you out. And so as a leader, if you're doing that, subconsciously people pick up on those things. So be aware of your body language whenever you're having your meetings. Don't make them too long, and make them pleasant, make them enjoyable. Get the information out and then let them go. As Moses told Pharaoh, let my people go. Right? So be aware of that. And then keep your standards high. The assignment that you're giving them to work with the children is one of the most important, if not the most important assignment in your church. These children, what you do for those children is going to affect their entire life. The great evangelist D.L. Moody came home one night and his wife said, "How'd it go?" And he goes, "Well, I had 2.5 salvations." And she said, "You mean 2 adults and a child?" And he said, "No, 2 children and 1 adult." The children have their entire life to live for Jesus. The adult's life is half over. So what you're doing, more people come to the Lord as children before the age of 13. Something like 80% of people who are Christian now came to the Lord before the age of 13. So make sure that they know this is an important assignment. You know it's an important assignment, and hold those standards high when you're recruiting. And then don't settle for less than what you should have. When someone is absent and they haven't let you know, first off, it's on a Sunday morning and it's time for them to be there. If they're not there shortly after that appointed time, I'm texting them or I'm calling them. I'm reaching out trying to find out what happened. And then if I can't get them, I will get them the next day or so. And when I get them, you have to, volunteers are the hardest people to lead because they're volunteering. They can quit at any moment. It's not like I was in the you would be in the military and the sergeant is telling the private to do something and the private has no say so about it, and no matter how the sergeant tells him to do it, he's still going to have to do it. No, we're working with volunteers and we have to be constantly encouraging. So if they don't show up for their scheduled time, I call them up, and when they answer, I say, "Hi, this is Pastor Larry. Hey, look, I was just calling to see if there's anything that I need to pray with you about." "Well, no. Why?" "Well, I know how dedicated you are to your job and how important it is for you to be there on Sunday. And when you weren't there, I just figured maybe something happened and that we might need to agree with you for prayer, because of it." "Oh, no, well, I'm sorry, Pastor Larry. It was blah, blah, blah. Aunt Susie came in at the last minute or the child got sick at the last minute, whatever it might be." I said, "Oh, okay, I understand that. I'll say a prayer for you, the sick child, but let me ask you to help me. Could you help me out and the next time when this happens?" And then just say what it says in your procedures manual for whatever your procedure is. But hold them accountable. If you don't hold them accountable, then they are going to think, well, what I'm doing isn't very important because they didn't care if I was there or not. And that's the last thing, because that person will eventually quit, and probably not a very long time after that, because they're not making a difference. So no, you hold them accountable. And then we had a young lady who was promoted to be the leader of an area of the children at our church. She'd been faithful and done a good job as serving and as a service captain. But as soon as she became that leader, she started being late. I would ask her, "Why? Can I help you?" I talked with her on the phone, sent text messages. I had her talk to the senior pastor. Finally, we had to just say, "Look, this job is too important for you to be late. Not only are you affecting the team members, but there was a time when you were assigned the person to open up the door and parents were here and the door wasn't open, and we can't have that. So I know you're dealing with an issue. Go into the service for the next 3 months, next quarter, you're not serving. You go into that sanctuary, you get underneath that anointed Word of God, and you allow the Holy Spirit and the Word of God to give you strength and to help you, because you're more important to me as a person than you are for what you do for me. So I want you to be right." So they go in, they serve that 3 months, and I told them, if you want to talk about being a leader again when this is over, we'll talk. Well, they came back and they said, "Yes, I want to be the leader. I enjoyed in there." Well, we liked her. She was a great person and had great ideas, and the kids liked her, the parents liked her. And I said, "Well, what's different? Why are you going to not have the issues you had last time?" So she tells me all the reasons why. And so we again put her back in there as the leader. And then it started again very quickly. And so I had to pull her aside and say, "Look, I love you and I want you to be right with God, but we cannot have someone in this position that is not 100% invested into it. It's just too valuable. So I'm going to have to ask you to step down. I love you. I want you to keep coming to the church, but we're not going to sacrifice our children because someone can't do their job. So hold your standards high. God will provide, and He did for us. We have a wonderful leader in there now. And so make sure that you hold your standards high. And then keep the why before them. We like to tell people how and what to do, but sometimes we forget to tell them why. And if they know the why, they'll learn how to do the how and the what. And they'll learn because they want to. They want to be a part of it when they find out why you're doing what you're doing. And first off, we're doing it for Jesus because Jesus said to get the word out, to be a light, to be an example, tell others about salvation. So we're doing it for Jesus because that's what He's called every Christian to do. Every Christian is a minister or a missionary according to Jesus when He said, you go into all the world and preach the gospel. So we're doing it for Jesus. And then we're doing it for our church. The number one reason new families stay at a church is the children's ministry. You see, if the parents don't think that the preaching is quite as deep as they need, they can read a book or listen to a podcast. They can get, quote, fed spiritually a different way. Or if they don't like the style of music, they can kind of put up with it again because they're adults. They can find a way to listen to the music they like. But if their child gets in the car, I don't like that, it wasn't any fun, nobody's there, they're not going back to that church. So you're doing this for your church as well, for the growth of your church. And then finally, you're doing it for the children, to make a difference in the lives of those children that again will affect them for decades. Recently, we had a grandmother who was bringing her grandchildren, and they came sporadically because they lived a few miles away from the church in another city. And one Sunday she came and her granddaughter was holding the hand of a little boy. And the grandmother came up to me and said, I know he's too young, he's only 4, to be in your class because you had to be in K-5, attending school to be in our class. And she said, but last Saturday, the week before, we went to a Renaissance festival, and afterward, in the parking lot as we got ready to leave, this little boy was wandering around in the parking lot, couldn't find his parents. And my granddaughter went over to him. She was about 8 or 9, began talking with him, and he bonded with my granddaughter, and so he didn't want to leave her. And we called DCF in and they talked, and because of his connection with my granddaughter, they've allowed us to keep him until they make a permanent placement for him. But he's not going to go away from my granddaughter. He wants to be with her. So is it okay if he sits with the children with her? Of course it is. We understand that. You have rules, but there's always an exception to the rule. And so I allowed him, so I went to come in, I went over to speak to him, and he immediately jumped behind the little girl and was scared, didn't want to have anything to do with me, so I left him alone. He sat in his chair. You could see that he was very scared. He didn't stand up to sing, didn't participate. At one point, he actually wet on himself sitting in the chair because he was so scared. He came back the next Sunday. I again tried to greet him, and he pulled back and stayed away. And so I left him alone, and just like, this went on for 2 or 3 Sundays, never stood up, never sang, never participated in anything, just sat there. And then about the 3rd or 4th Sunday, at the end of the service, I always lead the children in a prayer to ask Jesus into their heart. And I do the exact same prayer every Sunday, because 20 years from now, if some kid has gotten away from the Lord, they'll know at least one prayer to pray because they've heard it so many times. So I had my head bowed and was saying the prayer. Of course, now my workers have their eyes open. Right? I have my eyes shut because I'm the leading the children. And my stage is only about 6 or 8 inches high. And I'm up there on the stage. And during that prayer, I felt a little hand take hold of mine. And I looked down during that prayer, and that little boy had gotten out of his seat, walked up on that stage. He felt comfortable enough. He felt love like he had never felt before, the love of God touching him. And he walked up on that stage and took my hand, bowed his head, and he said that prayer with me that day. That's why we do what we do. That little boy was affected in a way that he had never been affected before. And he felt love. So he knew it was love. He knew he was safe. He knew he was secure because of the love of God. So that's why we do what we do. We do it for the children. So keep that why, that vision of your ministry before your people. And then celebrate. This is one of the things that I think that our churches usually are the worst at doing. We're so busy trying to do the next big thing. Christmas just finished. All right, we've got all that. We'll relax a little bit in January, but February's got Valentine's Day. What are we going to do for Valentine's Day? Oh, Easter's coming up, biggest day of the year. What are we going to do for Easter? Oh, and VBS, oh my goodness, we got to get all the workers, we got to get our curriculum, we got to get our art supplies, we're so busy to do the next big thing that we sometimes forget to stop and recognize and celebrate all the hard work that went into doing what we've just done, what we just finished. So every Tuesday, my workers get an email from me, and I put something in there that I personally saw them do. Joy Lee, I saw you greet Bobby as he walked in this morning. I know Bobby liked the fact that somebody was celebrating his coming to church. Or Darlene, I saw you over there helping that new child and show them around the room and get them involved with the game and introducing them to the other kids. I put something in there personal so that they know I saw what they were doing. So I celebrate them once a year, as many churches do, but our church has a volunteer recognition day. And we put every volunteer who served over the past year, we put their name on a scroll and scroll it on the big screens that are in the sanctuary. And if you don't think that's very important, leave somebody's name off and see how quickly they'll let you know that you left their name off. So recognize them. Find out what their anniversary is, or their birthdays, or the birthdays of their children. Send them text messages, send them emails, send them postcards. Maybe go out to lunch with them once in a while. Build that personal relationship, but celebrate them. Tell them thank you for what they are doing. And I'll close this up with the verse in Nehemiah 8:10. where it says, "Go and enjoy choice food and sweet drinks, and send some to those who have nothing prepared. This day is holy to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." The joy of the Lord is your strength. And the joy of celebrating one another will strengthen your team, strengthen your ministry, and they'll want to work longer and harder for you than they ever had before. All right, now, I hope that this lesson had some information for you, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Just reach out and say anything about it that you want to through an email. And then please check out the YouTube channel. There's videos a lot more like this, and a lot of some that are shorter than this one. So again, my name is Larry Hillman, and God bless you.